Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Lucy and I have just finished my 4th year of medical school. So today I thought I would just give you an update about everything that's been going on with my life, because it's been ages since I've just done a sit down video where I've just talked to you about stuff, and I've been pretty inactive on YouTube over the last few weeks, so I thought I should probably explain why. Essentially this video is going to be a review of my 4th year of medical school. So I finished my last exam last Friday, today is Monday, so I'm kind of still enjoying that new freedom that I have. I only have a 2-week summer holiday, which feels like it's going to fly by, and then I'm going to be in my final year of medical school, which is crazy really. I remember being a first year and thinking how, you know, how far away final year seemed, and it's actually nearly me now, so that's really quite scary. A lot of you kind of requested videos where I explain sort of how 4th year was, or like what we did during the year, how placement worked, what the exams were like and all of that. So I'm just going to kind of review everything about 4th year. I will put timestamps in the description so you can skip to whatever bit you want to sort of hear about. I'm at the University of Nottingham. Obviously medical school differs where you are, but for us 4th year is kind of a very big year in terms of, you know, heavy content, a lot of placement, and it's also the penultimate year as well. The reason why I've been so inactive on YouTube is because I really have just been so busy. I've just literally been working so hard. I've been on placement, and then when placement finished it was kind of revision, and any kind of break I gave myself from revision I just wanted to actually relax and like do nice things. And so I've been an awful YouTuber and haven't sort of made any videos, which has been really bad, but I think I just needed to focus. And for us, the reason why 4th year exams are really important is because our 2nd year and 4th year exam results are what goes towards our final score, which is what will be used to rank us against all the other medical students in the country, which then kind of determines what hospital you get to work at, whether you get your most preferred job and things like that. So the exam results this year really did matter for us. But yeah, so I've really been focused on exams, but they're finally over. So 4th year is made up of lots of different placements, so there's lots of rotating around different departments in the hospital, and for me there was lots of rotating around different hospitals as well. A lot of people in my year got to stay in the same hospital all year long. I went to quite a few hospitals, so I went to Boston, Lincoln, Mansfield, spent a bit of time at Newark Hospital as well, and I went to some other sort of like community, like smaller hospitals and clinics and things as well, and obviously my GP placement, which was in a different place. So I feel like I've been moving and packing my bag and unpacking so many times this year, and that's been part of why I think it's been the hardest year of med school so far for me. You know, without even the medicine side of things, just the constant moving around and the packing and never feeling settled and having to settle into new hospital accommodation and try to make a room feel like home for what can sometimes just be 4 weeks and then moving on again. It was really tough, and then it was definitely the heaviest year in terms of content. I cannot believe how much content we had to learn this year, and it's so weird because looking back, at the beginning of the year I just thought there's no way I'm going to be able to learn all of this stuff, there's just no way I'm going to be memorising it all, and by the exams I did feel like I pretty much had. I don't know how I did it, to be honest. So the placements that we did in 4th year were obstetrics and gynecology. So obstetrics is the care of pregnant women and the delivery of their babies, and gynecology, which is kind of like reproductive system, so sort of, you know, medicine of the womb, the ovaries, sexual health, all those sort of things. So those two combined were for 8 weeks. Then I had 4 weeks of psychiatry, 4 weeks of healthcare of later life, then I had a 4-week GP placement, and then I had 4 weeks of specials, so that included 2 weeks of ENT, which is ear, nose and throat, 1 week of dermatology, which is skin, and 1 week of ophthalmology, which is eyes, and then I had 8 weeks of paediatrics, which is children medicine. So a big variety there. Overall, I actually did enjoy all of my placements. I thought I would absolutely hate ophthalmology and ended up really quite liking it. My favourite has to be paediatrics. I really did enjoy it. I just loved sort of interacting with the patients. The doctors as well in the hospital were really nice. It was a really nice friendly ward, and I think it was a really nice one to end on. I also really liked obs and gynae, so especially like being on labour ward, delivering a baby was really exciting. So in terms of how placement actually works, and I think this is something that I didn't really understand before I went on placement, and I did do a whole video about this where I explained sort of, you know, how I learned and how I studied on placement. But I think, yeah, I never really understood what placement involves, so I'll just really briefly explain sort of what we did. So placement is made up of teaching and then kind of like self-directed shadowing and, you know, just getting involved with clinical activities. So in terms of teaching, we'd often have teaching sessions where it would be more lecture based, so it would be a teaching fellow or a consultant talking to you about a topic and you sitting and listening. But most of the time it's more seminar like, in that it's constant questions, so they're not just telling you things, spoon feeding you. It's kind of like you're having to think, you're having to answer their questions. And so whenever you went into one of those teaching sessions, I felt like you had to already know all the stuff you were going to cover, because it would literally be them just quizzing you. Some teaching sessions were more kind of OSCE-like practice. So OSCEs are the clinical exams we do at the end of the year, where we kind of have to act out patient scenarios. So we'd sort of sometimes practice them throughout the year. Sometimes that was on teams, so there'd be like simulated patients or actors, and you'd have to sort of, you know, practice doing a 10-minute consultation with them, and then the rest of your group would give you feedback. Then there's going to clinics, so that's sort of where you sit in with a doctor. Sometimes it would be more observing, and sometimes they'd let you actually do consultations yourself, and then you'd sort of present back to them what you found, and then they'd sort of finish it off for you. Then there's ward rounds, so where you actually go around with the consultant and the team and you see the patients on the ward. Again, that's more sort of observation. Sometimes you might like write in the notes and stuff, but mostly that was just, you know, observing, asking questions. So then there's just sort of the time where you have to go on the wards, take histories from patients, examine them, practice doing skills like for gynae doing speculum examination. Yeah, and then depending on the speciality there might be some more sort of specialist things, so like watching gynae surgery in theatre, or watching dermatology sort of surgical procedures, or, you know, delivering a baby if you're on labour wards. So in terms of how placement is sort of assessed, often there isn't really a formal kind of, it's not like an exam at the end, but they sort of monitor your attendance, so you have to like obviously attend. And then we also had sign-offs, so for some of them there were like way more than others. So I remember for obs and gynae we had this huge list, and it was all these like conditions we should try and see and things we should try and do, like we should try and present cases and things. Sometimes we had to sort of keep a logbook of stuff we were doing. But the main sort of sign-offs we had were called MACs, and they're sort of mandatory assessment things we have to do. So for example, for gynae we had to show that we could examine a pregnant woman and show that we could do a speculum examination. And then for psych we had to sort of present to a consultant a psych history that we'd taken, and sort of a mental state examination. There's all these different things for each placement that we had to do, and then the consultant would like sign you off on your app on your phone. So they were sometimes quite sort of tricky to get done, because obviously sometimes you just needed the situation to arise. Like one of them was like a urine pregnancy test, so you just had to kind of wait until someone needed a pregnancy test for you to be able to do it. Sometimes they were more serious than others, so in paediatrics it was kind of more of an exam where, you know, it was taken quite seriously and done quite formally, where you had to sort of examine a child in front of the consultant and stuff like that. So that sort of varied on what it was like. And then there's other activities you have to do, like for pretty much all of the placements there was some sort of presentation you had to do, whether that be to sort of the ward round, so like all the doctors and things in the department, or whether it was just to your peers. There pretty much was always, I felt like I was always making presentations. Another big thing I did this year was completely change my study technique. So you might have watched videos in the past where I kind of made handwritten notes and things, and I just completely scrapped that because there'd be absolutely no time for me to have done all that. So I used Quizlet flashcards, and it was really weird for me not having a big set of notes that I could flick through. In hindsight, it's really difficult to tell like if it was the right decision. I think it was, because throughout the year I'd test myself on the Quizlet flashcards, and I'd kind of build confidence, because throughout the year I'd get more and more of the flashcards right, so I could kind of see my progress. Whereas I think for me, if I just have a set of notes, I just kind of read them, and every time I read them I think I know everything, but I don't actually know it if I was to have to sort of recall it myself. So I think flashcards for me were really good. They also allowed me to quantify my work a bit more. So for example, I could say, okay, when it got nearer to exams, I'd do this amount of flashcards each day. So I could make sure that I'd cover everything in that time, rather than just saying revise dermatology for this day, because I think that would be a bit more daunting. It was also the first time I used PassMed and I used QuesMed as well, so they're just two, you know, big question banks with loads of medical questions, and I just sort of worked my way through them throughout the year, and it was nice to sort of see the improvement again of me starting off getting loads of the questions wrong because I just didn't know any of the material, and then by the end, you know, I was getting most of them right. So that was a good way to kind of track my progress. We'll obviously see when I get my exam results whether I passed or whether I did well, so that will indicate to me whether it's a good technique to carry on using. So then on to exams and what we actually had to do for our exams. So we only had 3 exams, which doesn't sound like many, but I just felt like each of them felt like they carried so much importance, and each was so difficult as well. So the first exam we had was our OSCE. I can't actually remember what OSCE stands for, but like I said, it's the clinical exam. So for us it was 8 stations, and it's timed, so you have 10 minutes for each station and you go around like a sort of carousel, although it's a lot scarier than that sounds. And so there's kind of like a buzzer and you go into your first station, and then you have 10 minutes, for example, to conduct a telephone appointment with someone, to diagnose them, and to explain to them how you're going to manage them, you know, what treatment you're going to give them. And you'll be doing this, and there'll be a fake patient on the end of the phone, and there'll be an examiner watching you. At the end of the 10 minutes, sort of the buzzer goes off and you just go out of your station into the next one, and then you'll have like a different appointment. It will be a different speciality, a new patient. Most of them were actually in person, but I did have a couple of telephone appointments. And yeah, in terms of the OSCE, it's just so difficult to tell how it went, because when I was going round, I kind of was really, well, I think I was quite composed in that if things went wrong or I got things wrong or forgot things, I didn't panic at the time. I just kind of moved straight on to the next station, didn't think about it. But then I kind of came out at the end and was like, oh, I forgot so many things, and I was going through all the stations thinking of things I got wrong, and not necessarily wrong, but things I could have done better. But I think that's kind of how everyone feels, because it's so time pressured and it's so scary having that examiner sat watching you, that you do just kind of, you know, it's hard to not crumble under the pressure. But I'm just so happy I didn't blank out. You know, I didn't completely freeze and just forget how to talk. I didn't sort of miss any of the tasks or not finish the stations. So I hope that it went well. And then we had 2 knowledge papers, and they are multiple choice, and we did them online. Some people did them in person. I just did them from home, but we sort of got monitored, like we were filmed while we were doing them and stuff, so there was absolutely no like cheating, which is good because I wanted it to be a fair exam. But yeah, both of them were quite tough, and there were questions that I was often stuck between 2 answers at the end, and I just could not pick one of the answers over the other. But again, I think it went okay. I think I probably passed, but it's really hard to tell. I'm just trying to sort of not think about it, because our results day is kind of in the second week of our summer holiday, I think, and I don't want to spend the whole of my summer holiday worrying about whether I passed or not. So I'm just going to hope that I did. So yeah, and then that was the end of 4th year. I do sort of, you know, I feel like bittersweet looking back on it. It was a really tough year. I'm glad it's over, sort of thing. I'm ready to move on now to the next year. I'm ready to sort of be more in Nottingham, because next year my placements are a lot more local compared to the ones I had this year, where I'd been moving around loads. You know, I'm not really going to have to stay in hospital accommodation that much next year, so that's a relief. I do sort of think, oh, like, it was a really great year. My favourite year of medical school so far, definitely, even though it was the hardest. Yeah, I just think it's the year where I've improved the most. I've come so far. Yeah, I'm just going to be proud that I got through it. Hopefully, if I pass, I will be in final year. So really briefly, I just wanted to say a few things I learned over this year. The first would be to know when to call it a day on the wards. It could be so easy to spend hours and hours just shadowing a doctor, or just kind of waiting around in case something happens, or sort of being too awkward to leave. And I think by the end I definitely got good at being like, I'm going to go onto the ward, I'm going to spend an hour or 2 hours taking some histories, examining some patients, and then I'm going to go home and study and revise or whatever, because otherwise you can just waste a lot of time just standing around, and that's fine if you didn't have to learn all of this content as well, but you do have to learn a massive amount of content, so you have to make sure you leave time to do that. And especially near the end of placement, when we were starting to revise and get ready for exams, I just would sort of be like, yeah, once I've taken a few histories and sort of, you know, seen a few patients, then I'm just going to leave. And that worked really well for me, because it still allowed me to make the most of the placement, but it stopped me wasting loads of time just stood on the ward waiting for something to happen. The second thing I learned was how to grow a thick skin. I think from the very beginning in my first placement, you can often feel really unwanted. There's often, you know, like consultants or theatre nurses or anyone who kind of actively says that you're in the way, like whether they say it directly to you or not, like it's quite obvious that they think you're in the way and they want you to go away. And I think you just always have to remember that you are there for a reason. You're there to learn to be a doctor. You can't learn to be a doctor just sitting, studying in your bedroom. So you have a right to be on placement and be on the wards and be in the theatres, and just no matter how much someone makes you feel like you're just, you know, literally a waste of space, just remember that you have a right to be there, and that one day you might be that consultant operating in that theatre. Obviously if someone genuinely asks you to leave because you shouldn't be there, then do, but I mean, it was more the kind of the grumpy attitude sometimes we'd get, like, oh, there's a med student here, oh, that's really annoying. Yeah, and I think you just have to kind of be above all of that and just focus on learning and making the most of your placement. Third thing is to actually learn everything, which sounds really stupid, but there were a lot of points on certain placements where I'd think, you know what, I can't learn, you know, every single antenatal appointment and when it is and what happens at every antenatal appointment and, you know, all these dates and things. I just thought I can't remember all of that, but you do have to know it. And I think the sooner you just get over the fact that, yeah, it is a ridiculous amount of content to memorise, the sooner you could just get on with actually learning it, because you really do have to know every detail. And I think my exams showed me that as well, that there are a lot of really weird niche bits of knowledge that you did have to know to be able to get the marks. And so yeah, I'm glad that I made such comprehensive flashcards and I spent so long learning them. Obviously not everything's going to be tested and that's always going to be annoying, but they do test those finer details, and so don't just think you can just, you know, learn the really basic concepts or learn the really common conditions, because sometimes you will get asked about those more niche things. And finally, just enjoy being on placement. And I just feel like all my placements this year went so quick, and so just try and enjoy them as much as you can, because for some of them it might be the only time you do it. Like, I might never do ophthalmology again in my life. Just try and enjoy every placement you have. And yeah, I hope that video was interesting or helpful in some way. I'm sorry if I rambled a bit, and I will try to sort of get back, you know, posting videos and doing vlogs and things, because I do really enjoy doing vlogs. But yeah, I hope I will get to film a lot more in my final year of med school. And thank you very much for watching. Bye!